Here we are. It is Wednesday in advance of the regular Elko County Commission meeting today, 1:30 this afternoon. And today's guest is our Assistant Elko County Manager. So pleased to welcome back in studio Curtis Moore. Curtis, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate the opportunity. We'll look over, there are just a couple of sort of bigger items on the County Commission agenda today for the meeting that starts at 1:30, but we do want to focus a lot of our conversation on something that people are pretty anxious about, and that's controlling the Mormon crickets, of which we don't have any kind of crystal ball, but we can only plan and prepare for the worst, I guess, Curtis, in that case. So what we'll do is start off with the Fire Commission agenda. That will begin at 1:15 today, and there is interesting discussion. We're being led by our Elko County Fire Protection Chief, Matt Peterson, and he's going to present an expansion plan for providing service to wells. Is that right?
Yeah, and so Matt has done a great job of finding sort of ways to partner with different people in the area and different stakeholders. And this is just sort of an extension of his work in that area. And so there's an agreement here just sort of outlining, helping to provide increased fire protection in wells, which helps, with a variety of things, reducing the amount of fire in the community, which is big, obviously, but also, lays out sort of how wells will kind of help offset that cost and things. And so I think it's a pretty good all-around agreement and kind of benefits everybody involved. And so I'm excited to see that go into place here.
And that's about a $100,000 a year impact from wells. Wells would agree to underwrite the cost just as much as they can. The Fire Protection District has been in this amazing position of actually having financial resources to order up new fire equipment and to build fire stations, Curtis. And this is really a result of just a new way of thinking and a new revenue stream for County Fire Protection District, but it also involves community buy-in. So this is probably another example of that.
Yeah. Like I said, Matt's done a really great job of engaging all of our community stakeholders and really sort of looking at things that we haven't done or been able to do before and figuring out how to do them. So I think it's a great step.
Yep, it's not unusual either that we would provide that. I think the Elko County Sheriff's Office, if I'm not mistaken, if they still provide law enforcement services, Wells is not quite big enough to afford a lot of the municipal services that the city of Elko does, for example. But Wells, being smaller, can form these relationships and these financial agreements with the county to provide services.
Yeah, and it's really similar sort of to that situation.
Perfect. So that's on the fire agenda at 1:15 when the County Commission meets in regular session this afternoon. Also some exciting news for another outlying yet unincorporated community, and that is the town of Jackpot. They are on the doorstep of finally getting some affordable housing. This has really been a situation for them for decades.
Yeah, and so, sorry.
You're fine. It's that time of year.
After COVID sort of ended, Jackpot really bounced back in a big way, and things are opening up, and there's new businesses and things there. There's just not quite enough people who live in Jackpot to work in all the places in Jackpot, and there's not a lot of housing that's affordable to the people who work in a lot of those places. And so currently there's a situation where the owners of those places are actually busing in workers from Twin Falls to come down and work in Jackpot. And so this is just kind of an effort to take this 55 acres of land and start making it into some of these single-family residential home sites, places people want to live, get them down here, living where they work, raising their families, doing all that sort of thing, and really sort of increasing Jackpot's stature as a community, as a place where people would like to live rather than just visit.
Jackpot has its own charm. I mean, it really does. It is an outlying community of Elko County, but it's right on the border with Idaho. And as you mentioned, and I can't remember, is it like 60-something miles from Twin? I just can't remember off the top of it. It's been a while since I've driven
Something like that. I always think it's about a little under an hour.
Exactly. That's why I was thinking 60 something miles. So basically, having this housing shortage, 146 single family residential home sites have been mapped out. That will make a huge difference because Jackpot can literally grow. Elko County will grow in that community. It is a popular community for recreation. It's got a little bit different climate. Obviously, casinos there. I think they have the tallest high-rise casino in Elko County in Jackpot at Cactus Pete's.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah, I think that's because I don't think any of the West Wendover casinos rival that. They have a beautiful golf course and they also have an airport. So a lot of people use Jackpot as a getaway, Curtis.
Yeah, they do. And there's an item on today's agenda to also sort of Jackpot and the workers up there in our Jackpot Public Works. They really diligent about sort of chasing resources to keep that airport up and running and in good condition, so people can visit, so that there's emergency air services available. That airport serves a really central purpose to the town, and so keeping that going, growing the town, it's all I think really good things for Jackpot and for the area.
That's nice. That allows those, again, communities, Jackpot to grow, maybe not as rapidly, obviously, as West Wendover, but West Wendover's been able to do things to also grow their community, grow their local economy, the opportunities for restaurants and retail, and again, just enhance that visitor experience, because that's really what it's about when you're a border community, right, Curtis?
Yeah, 100%. People go there to just kind of get away and have experiences that they may be able to have in their home state. And I think that both those communities provide that for them.
Curtis Moore is our assistant county manager. And I don't know if I don't see this indicated on an agenda. It might come up in discussion, Curtis, but do we know if any of this growth is being afforded by the cannabis operation there?
It's been a while since I looked into exactly how many people work there and how many people visit there. It's been in operation for a few years now, and it seems to be doing well. There's certainly people that get their living from that, and there's certainly people that go there. And so I think that and I'd have to look again to see kind of what the fiscal impact of that has been, but there's a certain amount of taxes that come from the sales driven by the cannabis store, every little bit helps, and I seems to be a positive for the community.
Yeah, any kind of an attraction. And again, that's a form of recreation. It's legal in Nevada. It's legal to purchase and to consume within certain parameters. It is not, however, to consume or to purchase, obviously, in neighboring Idaho or even in Utah. So again, some attraction there with both West Wendover and Idaho. So interesting. That'll be a great conversation. Item G on the County Commission agenda, but probably the most significant portion of the discussion will be the county's approving this affordable housing project, again, to alleviate that Jackpot commute between Twin Falls and, again, 146 single-family residential home sites would be developed as a result. Now, if they can just get the builder in, right, from Idaho, and I think legislation is in the works there, because there's also an issue with having contractors licensed in Idaho and Nevada both, because that's a real burden for some businesses.
Yeah, it's a real slog to get. Most of the contractors on the Nevada side are located in Elko, and so it's a 2-hour drive from there, and so that's sort of part of the idea behind the affordable housing project, is to try to lower that initial cost and try to make it so that kind of pencils out for a developer and a contractor. And the bulk of today's discussion, I think, is really going to just be on the appraisal, which is kind of the next part of this whole process, is to transfer land for economic development or any of these projects. It needs to be appraised first.
All right. So the county is going step by step, and something that you're helping to shepherd. Curtis?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Our our chief civil deputy, Rand Greenberg, is, he's really kind of got this process down, and he's very good about, making sure that each step is done correctly and in the right order so that we don't run into problems down the road.
Yeah, Jackpot has waited long enough. Now that they have this opportunity, they really need to strike while that iron is hot. Curtis Moore is our assistant county manager and our guest in advance of the regular county meeting. The fire meeting starts at 1:15, the regular Board of Commissioners meeting at 1:30. Apologies if we didn't talk about something on the agenda that you are hoping to. You can log on to the meeting and participate or view it live at elkocountynv.net. Of course, you're invited to be there. It is a public session in the Nanini Administrative Building, Suite 102. They're at 540 Court Street. Well, now if you're ready to talk cricket control, I think, Curtis, a lot of people are kind of anxious about this time of year based on their experiences in previous years.
Yeah. So I'm always ready to talk crickets. It's been something we've talked about a lot in the last few years. Last year was sort of the first year in some time that Elko County's had any kind of infrastructure to manage crickets. And so we started about this time last year buying a couple of dry material spreaders and some pallets of 7.5 cricket bait, which uses carbaryl as an insecticide, which we like partly because when you throw out something with these dry bait spreaders, there's no drift. And so if you treat next to somebody's field or next to somebody's house, the pesticide doesn't go over there. It just stays in the county right of way where you put it. Also like it because it's really, it's obviously not completely harmless, right? Nothing is, but it's fairly inert when it comes to anything else that might come along. So it really it does a good job on crickets, insects, things like that. But birds that might come along, or even if your dog should eat a few crickets, it doesn't have a big impact on them like that. So it's fairly safe as far as insecticides go.
And it has been in use for decades, I'm sure. We've become very familiar, as you said, here in Elko County. So I guess a couple of questions. Didn't Elko County, we approved, this was on a recent agenda, there's a new pest control sort of district, Curtis, so that we can administer this?
Yeah, and so starting July 1st, Elko County will have a weed control and pest abatement general improvement district. And really that's kind of a way to just sort of maintain this infrastructure and allow for kind of a constant monitoring of the crickets, but also weeds, just anything that kind of grows in a public right-of-way that can become a problem. And so, right now we're in the middle of a cricket cycle, and so we'll obviously be focused on that. But later on down the road, when there's not as many crickets, they'll be able to focus on other pests, but also on some of the noxious weeds that we find and that kind of go along those county right-of-ways as a vector to get farther into public lands.
So, Curtis, a general improvement district, is that a way to divert some of the funding necessary for this, or where do we get the funding?
So the funding for the for the general improvement district, it will come partly. Right now, the county allocates about $80,000 to treat weeds in public right-of-ways. So it'll come partly from that, but the bulk of it will come probably from a special assessment. And there will be a future meeting when the commission will talk about kind of how much to set that assessment at and that sort of thing. And so it's just kind of a flat rate that comes kind of from every parcel. And it's similar to how we finance things like the Salt Lake Basin Solid Waste District and things like that. And so, it's just sort of setting aside that money for a specific purpose, and it keeps it moving along there so that, when this district gets up and running, they'll be able to keep it going and become more effective with, equipment and probably with more sophisticated sprays, and they'll have time to do the trainings and get licensed, and so to put out more effective chemicals and things like that.
And are there specific zones that would be impacted, or is that yet to be determined?
Still yet to be determined. The district itself is kind of an overlay of the fire district, and so it's kind of the whole county minus the incorporated cities. The district, as the ordinance is written, kind of has the ability to make agreements with incorporated cities or with other entities to allow them to do that. And it's something that's kind of been informal in the past, but that'll make it easier to formalize. And this will all go into place on July 1st. Until then, we've still got the equipment that we bought beforehand. We've also hired a seasonal worker to come in and to start being able to treat as soon as the crickets kind of show themselves and are big enough to eat the bait. And then, we've hired a full-time seasonal, and they'll be around, and we'll just sort of continue working on that. We've also been able to work with the Nevada Department of Agriculture to use their, this year they're going to have a specific website where you can go on and you can mark exactly where you see crickets when you go to report them, and then we'll be able to have access to that data, and so we'll be able to see kind of in real time where people are seeing the crickets and kind of where the largest concentrations of them are. So that'll sort of save some time as far as trying to map it out with Google Earth and figuring out the most effective way to kill as many crickets as possible.
And Elko County can eradicate pests on private or property, right, or adjacent to, because that's been the problem with the state. They can't go on to private parcels. It had to be public lands only.
Yeah, so the state has a cricket program, and yes, part of their funding most of their funding for that program comes from the I'm going to lose the acronym. It's APHIS, the Agricultural Plant Health Inspection Service.
Perfect. Yes.
Pretend that was right. But their funding comes from that. And so they can treat on public rangelands. They can treat on private rangelands with a cost share. And I think it comes out to a third of the cost of the treatment. But part of the problem they've run into in the past has been, the crickets move at about a mile a day, and so kind of predicting where they're going to be at on that checkerboard, and then getting a hold of that landowner and getting an agreement in place in time has always been a little bit of an issue. And so we're hoping to be able to help with that and maybe sort of liaise between the two entities. But also, county right-of-ways are kind of a key. They're really easy to drive on, right? That's why they're right-of-ways, and so they collect things like crickets, and so we'll be able to treat on county right-of-ways. The district, when it goes into effect, will be able to make agreements, like I said, with basically kind of whoever they need to be able to make agreements with. Which will give them a little bit more flexibility than some of the treatment agencies have had before.
Which really the goal is to stop the advancing crickets as much as possible. I mean, they've been around for probably millions of years, frankly. The cycles are, 15 to 20 years. So once they start hatching, we can kind of expect to see them around for quite a period of time. Yeah,
and it'll be a bit. There's, I'm sure most people are familiar kind of from like a high school biology class of kind of the curve of the rabbits and the coyotes, where you get more rabbits and their curve starts to go up, and then you get more coyotes because there's more food, and then the curve crashes eventually when you get enough coyotes to eat enough rabbits. And that's similar with the Mormon crickets and some of their predators. Coyotes are actually a predator of them, but everything eats them out there. So the coyotes, there's birds. There's a couple of their big predators, and some of this it's really new research. There hasn't been a ton of research on Mormon crickets in the past, and so they're sort of learning things all the time. But there's a couple different wasps that prey on these crickets. There's, I'm sure I saw a bunch of them last year. There's kind of a big black wasp that preys on them. There's also a little tiny 2 millimeter wasp that lays its eggs only in fertilized Mormon cricket eggs, which I don't know how you get that job as a wasp, but it's just how it worked out for them. So those, again, kind of go along that curve of if there's not a ton of Mormon crickets, there's not a ton of wasps, and then you get more Mormon crickets and you get more wasps, and then it kind of crashes. So I'm strongly team wasp this year.
Yeah.
They're not the friendliest little creatures, but they're out there sort of doing, this is their only job. So
Have we had anything to do with introducing wasp, or they're just showing up naturally as well?
they're just here naturally
Okay.
as sort of another sort of native species. There's some research being done on these wasps by universities in other states, and so they have test sites in other states. But yeah, we don't currently have wasps. Nobody will trust me with wasps yet. And so I've had to just sort of read those papers from afar and see.
And just kind of imagine a future with these armies of wasps that are going out like drones and attacking these in a very natural way. Wow, learned a lot here just in this short period of time. But basically the news is Elko County has a plan of attack. Now, when the hatching starts, so, we haven't heard of any hatching yet.
There's always wars and rumors of wars. So I've heard people say that they're starting to hatch. Our last year, kind of the first confirmed sightings were the last week of February. So it's probably about time, but they're right now kind of about the size of house flies. So they kind of grow for a little bit, and I never take good enough notes during the Mormon Cricket meetings to remember which instar it is. An instar is whenever they kind of molt and shed their skin and go on to do other things. And I never remember exactly which instar it is that they start marching, but they kind of get to a certain size, and then you can start to feed them the bait, and then they'll start moving around and things like that. So there's some rumors and things, but I haven't got an official report yet, and I haven't seen anything. But as soon as we start getting reports, I'll go out and then the full-time seasonal, when they start, we'll go out and take a look and do the monitoring, or is this 2 crickets over a mile, or is this a good enough concentration of crickets that it makes economic sense to try to kill these ones.
And as you said, they march a mile a day. Do we know, is there any job for crickets? I mean, we know they've, like we said, they've been around in some sort of form, probably prehistoric, because we don't see them until they hatch, and then they descend or they march, and then they devour. And they're scary looking. But the most important concern here is to the economy, because they destroy crops, they destroy landscaping, they discourage people from activities and things.
Yeah, they're gross, and nobody particularly likes them. In the ecosystem, kind of their niche is they're a remarkable source of protein that just kind of hangs out there. If you're out there on the deserts of the Great Basin, kind of your biggest mobile sources of animal protein are big game animals, even cottontails and stuff. But that's just a couple pounds. You've got billions and billions of these things making their way across the desert, and so animals that need that protein. Again, coyotes, birds. When they get into the water, fish. We'll do a lot of, all these animals are out there looking for that source of protein. So I was surprised to find out that snakes will sometimes eat them. And so again, whether you're on team snake or team cricket, I think kind of depends on your view. But yeah, so they're a huge protein source that just kind of is slow moving and just kind of plugs along out there. And so, they have been a food source for all kinds of animals out there, and including Native Americans also took advantage of them because, again, it doesn't, you're not going to burn a ton of calories chasing these things down, and they do have a lot of protein in them.
Wow. So it's good to know, again, Elko County being sort of collectively horrified that now we created a special general improvement district. I mean, the county's been responsive to this. And there is a fascination with them from people around the country, right? I think that's fair to say, because we've we've had to live with them.
Yeah, they end up on the news. I have a friend who collects bugs, and they ended up on the news, and she called and asked if I would send her one. And so, people are interested in them, and kind of people in Elko County, they're adaptable and things. And so I think this year there's going to be a second cricket con, just kind of tongue in cheek. If we have to deal with these things, we might as well have some fun with it. I'm not involved in that, but it seems to be something that people enjoy. So, nobody likes them, but I think they're an interesting part of the landscape, and just kind of something that we have to learn how to manage as a problem. And so, it's everything I've learned about them has been against my will, but they are really interesting little animals.
Well, thank you for giving us, obviously, this backstory on the Mormon crickets, Curtis, and also I think you're kind of reassuring, too, in a way, because a lot of people can kind of get hysterical about them. And in any good sense of the word, they typically should literally move through and be done within a couple weeks.
Ideally, yeah. Eventually they kind of stop and they start to lay their eggs, and then they just kind of chill until something comes and eats them, or it gets cold enough and they die. Especially early on in the season, they're just moving, and there's huge hordes of them, and they're gross. But ideally, they should keep going. That's one thing when people are looking at home treatment options that they should really consider, is that when you do start killing them, other ones will,
because they're carnivorous.
Yeah, they'll eat just anything they come across, including each other. And so, if you kill a couple, they'll stop and cannibalize those ones, and then that sort of holds up their whole thing. And so, I would never tell anybody how to treat on their own property. It's a very personal choice, but that is something to consider. Is that especially early on in the season, they will sort of keep going, ideally.
Like most controversies, this too shall pass. At least that's the hope. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And another good indicator of just how Elko County was concerned about this collectively is there was no opposition to creating a GID, right, Curtis? Everybody's like, well, if it's a few extra bucks on my parcel per year or per month, right?
Yeah. I think it's kind of one of those kind of non-controversial, really common sense things, in that it's, they're a little bit, they're less like snow, where, your snow, and I'm stealing this from Delmo Andriozzi, who's used this metaphor before, but the snow falls on your property and you deal with your snow on your driveway and stuff. They're a little bit more like a fire, where you kind of have to start dealing with them because it's too big of a problem for each homeowner to kind of deal with alone. And so, it just kind of makes sense to bundle it all together and say, for this much, we'll go ahead and try to take care of these things kind of at a larger scale and with a little more efficiency than your individual homeowners could.
Well, and as we're getting close to sending you downtown for the meeting, I realize I did not ask if it has been decided yet how much the GID might assess, Curtis, or is that still to be determined?
It hasn't. The commission will do that by resolution, and I'm hoping to have all of my financial modeling done for the first April meeting. And so ideally that's when I would like to have that discussion, but they haven't set that yet.
Okay. Cricket Patrol, though, we have a new division in Elko County.
Right.
Yes.
F Troop.
Okay, that's what it's called. Thank you, Curtis. Is there anything that we didn't get to today that you were really hoping to emphasize? I mean, I think this was a great discussion on the crickets. So.
No, I think I talked enough about crickets that most of your listeners have been grossed out and tuned out, so I don't know if there's anything else that I would cover here.
Hopefully they're not. And I did too want to give a shout out because I know that this type of relationship is important. The city of Elko, they do grasshopper control at the airport. And so as you mentioned, these kind of collaborative relationships could be beneficial if you already have a cricket squad or the F troop in place, then might be easily converted to go after grasshoppers. Because right now I think the airport staff does it. Just like you are the most highly qualified cricket bait spreader Elko County's ever had. So
yeah, well, and we did last year. We worked really closely with the city when the crickets showed up, kind of on the west side of Elko and in around Bullion Road, and so we're used to coordinating pretty closely with them. And so we'll do this, as the season gets started, and then when the district actually goes into effect, probably get something a little bit more formal in place.
Curtis Moore, you have the perfect demeanor for this position, the new cricket czar for Elko County.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We'll send Curtis downtown to the Elko County Commission fire meeting that starts at 1:15. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. The regular County Commission meeting starts at 1:30 today.